Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli back out here in the shop, and I want to welcome you to the last installment, part 3 of the Ultimate Crankbait Series. Over the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about why a diving crankbait, a build crankbait, or a plug is such a key lure. It's a bait that catches fish that are hungry, but it's a bait that you can make fish react to when they're not hungry. We also got into color and size, and we talked about retrieve and the key fact that you have to make this crankbait change direction on every cast. I don't care if you're bumping in the stumps or hitting off the bottom or fishing open water. When that crankbait's coming through and it changes direction, right? Steady, 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 boom, changes direction. That's what makes the fish react. That's how you create the reaction strike. So super important to make the crankbait change direction on every cast. That's a lot of good info, but this last piece is really going to complete the circle of talking about crankbait fishing. And in this series, this part of the series, we're going to talk about rod, reel, line. And without these key components, listen to me, you're not going to get the cast. You're not going to get the bite. You're not going to set the hook. You're not going to land the fish. You need this last part to complete the circle. And having the right rod, reel, and line for cranking is what we're going to talk about, okay? All right, let's start with the rod. And the rod for fishing crankbaits is very different than most of the rods you own. A rod for a crankbait is specialized in its action, and the rod is also specialized in the material, the construction of the rod itself. When you look at a crankbait, right, it's balsa or plastic or resin with a lip, but all crankbaits have treble hooks, right? Crankbaits plugs have treble hooks. And because of those treble hooks, we need a specialized rod, okay? So here it goes. You know, in other shops, you heard me talk in terms of action and what an action means. Well, I'm going to tell you about the action, how the rod's spec'd, but I really want to show it to you and give you an idea of how much more flex we need with a crankbait, right? We need more tip. We need more flex. And the rod itself has to become parabolic. And parabolic means it has more of a forgiving action throughout the rod. So the action that we want on a crankbait rod is a medium soft action. Medium soft. And when we put a load on the rod, this is really the best way to show it to you. Look how flexible this rod is, okay? Look at how much bend. Look at how much forgiveness is in that rod. We purposely want a rod that's more whippy, more flimsy, right? And this action, this rod is 60-40, 50-50, depending on the manufacturer, right? So now when we put a load on this rod, look at that bend. Goes all the way from the tip, all the way to right here. I can still see the bend right here. So let's count the guides this time. And we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10. 9 or 10 guides down, we have flex, okay? We have a forgiving rod. And I need that 40 or 50% of the top of that rod to be flimsy, okay? Now, what about the bottom half of the rod? What about from that 9th or 10th guy down to the butt? I still need backbone here, right? We're still bass fishing. I still got to have backbone here. But the top 40 or 50%, yo guys, flexible, okay? So we need a medium, soft rod. My favorite rod lengths for this style of fishing, for crankbait fishing, for treble hook fishing, is a 6.6 to a 7.6 rod, but here that goes. You ready? 7 foot or 7.3 is my favorite crankbait rod length. 7 to 7.3, 7.4, in that range. These rods that I'm using, these are Abu Garcia Ike Series rods. You heard me mention material. You ready? This is the one time in my rod selection where I prefer, you ready for this one? A composite rod. What does that mean? A composite rod is a mix of graphite and another material. In this case, fiberglass, glass, okay? And that composite rod, especially in this Ike series, gives it that flimsy ability, right? Gives it that flex that we need. So it's graphite and glass mixed together that gives me that soft tip. Okay, so the reason we want this slower action, right? The reason we want this more flexible tip is twofold. One is casting, especially these deeper plugs. When we start talking about a deep diving crankbait, we need to get this crankbait as far out as we can to let it achieve maximum diving depth, right? The longer the cast, the deeper this bait will dive. So that parabolic tip acts as a rubber band, right? It helps you load the bait and make longer casts. So we want that soft rod to make long casts. But the most important reason we want this, the most important reason we want a spongy, medium action, parabolic rod is to let the fish eat the bait before we set the hook. I like to refer to this part of it as delay. In fact, this Ike Series composite rod is called the Delay Series. And the theory of that is, you know, think about that crankbait. It's wobbling, it's coming through, it hits off a target. When it deflects, that fish laying there reacts, and he comes up and starts to eat it. And your reaction when you feel something different, this is human nature, is that when you feel something, you pull. Well, if we have a super stiff rod and we're throwing it on straight braid, when we feel that fish start to eat it, we have a tendency to pull it. And we miss a lot, okay? But with a soft tip, look at this tip, right? With this super soft tip, this delay theory kicks in. And we still feel the fish get it. But now when we set the hook, that rod takes longer to load, which in turn adds a little bit of delay to let that fish get his mouth around it, okay? So soft tip because of casting distance, soft tip because of delay in the hook set, and one last benefit of this soft tip. Are you ready for it? Here it goes, guys. Landing more fish. The only problem with a crankbait, look at them, they all look the same, is they're loaded with treble hooks, but man, do fish like to jump, they like to dive, they like to do head shakes, they like to flip-flop. And with a stiff rod, when that fish comes up and shakes, imagine if he's caught on this back hook and he comes up and does the head shake. Dude, that's a lot of leverage with a stiff rod. There's no give, right? So if he goes that way, the rod doesn't want to give, and that crankbait pops out a lot. A jump, a dive, whatever. So the other hidden benefit of this soft rod is that when that fish jumps or he's diving next to the boat, the tip on the fight is giving to the fish. And you land a lot more with this style rod on treble hooks, okay? So 7 to 7.3, 7.4, medium action, soft parabolic rod. I prefer a casting rod. If you're watching this and you're a spinning rod guy only, same theory. Same theory. Reel. I love a low profile casting reel, but 90% of the time, we want a reel that does not overwork the bait, okay? We don't want to over retrieve. So we want to pick a reel that has more power than speed. And because of that, I want a slower to medium retrieve reel. You know, anything in that 5.4, 5.8 to 7 to 1 fits our criteria. But I absolutely am in love with a 6.6 to 1 or a 6.8 to 1 gear ratio reel. The Revo Ike is available in a 6.6 to 1. It's the perfect cranking reel. We just want that power. We want that methodical retrieve, okay? We don't want to overwork it. The last one is line. And man, there's 3 line choices. You know what they are: mono, flora, and braid. You can use all 3, but I'm a big advocate, and I prefer, for my crankbait fishing, monofilament or fluorocarbon only. I take braid out of the equation because remember what we said about delay. Remember what we said about stretch. I want that fish to get it before I get him. With braid, you feel it too quick. And when you pull, there's no stretch. I want line with a little bit of stretch, right? So my rule of thumb for line is if I want this crankbait to run shallower or stay higher, if I'm fishing dirt shallow and I'm trying to keep the crankbait high, buoyant, I use mono. 10 to 17 pound monofilament. I really like 12 pound and 14 pound, great line sizes. 12, 14, or 15, great sizes in mono. But I'm going to tell you about 75% of my fishing with a crankbait, I use fluorocarbon. And the reason I use fluorocarbon most of the time when crankbait fishing is it's got stretch, but it's not too stretchy. It's pretty abrasion resistant. It's invisible for those times when you're in clear water. But the biggest reason I love fluorocarbon on crankbaits, the line sinks. Fluorocarbon's dense. It's sinking line. And a dense line for a crankbait means 2 things. It means better action. Think about that tight wobble crankbait, guys. Look, there's that little OG Slim. We talked about that tight vibration, cold water, right? Subtle. That will have a better tight vibration on fluorocarbon than mono or braid. So I like the fluorocarbon because of better action, and I like the fluorocarbon because of diving depth. Remember in the second episode, we said You want a crankbait when you're trying to hit the bottom that runs as deep or deeper than the depth you're fishing. To get that crankbait down easier and you get it to achieve maximum diving depth, 6, 10, 20, whatever that is, fluorocarbon will allow that bait to get deeper quicker and stay down because the line sinks. It's dense. This is a critical component. Guys, just because this is the last installment, rod, reel, line, it's not less important. Pick those right tackle pieces and it completes the circle for your crankbait fishing. I hope you enjoyed this series as much as I did. I love crankbait fishing. I love fishing a plug. I've won a lot of tournaments in my career using that bait right there, and it will help you catch more fish. Feeding fish and fish that you have to make react. Man, if you like this series, if you like this information, stop right now, hit my subscribe button, subscribe to the channel. If you do that, we're going to get new content to you every single week. We're going to try to help you become a better angler. If you're already subscribed, tell your friends about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We got a lot of great content coming every single week. Have a good one. Try a crankbait. You're going to catch a lot of big bass. Bye.